Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my site softer?
Can I make my site firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. Enjoy personalized comfort for better sleep night after night. And now, max out your savings. The more you buy, the more you save on beds, bases, and more. Plus, get free home delivery on any smart bed with base. Limited time. Check it out at a Sleep Number store near you or at sleepnumber.com today.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show. You ever meet someone and instantly know that they've lived 5 lives before breakfast? Well, my guest today is Dr. Allison Applebaum, born into a household where there were more pianos than bedrooms. You know, she was supposed to become a concert pianist. Sound familiar? Instead, she chose the ballet. Then 9/11 happened and everything changed. She ran north, literally, out of the dust and into a psych ward by choice. And she didn't just pivot. She burned the script, rewrote the play, and turned personal grief into a national policy for herself. She's the founding badass behind the country's first, get this, mental health clinic for caregivers. What an idea, because, shocker, no one thought caregivers deserved therapy until she kind of forced the issue. Her dad arranged the song Stand By Me, and she wrote the book of the same name. Karmic? Necessary? Absolutely. This one's for the people in the waiting room, the ones who never get asked how they're doing, the caregivers. I'm Matthew Zachary. This is Out of Patience. Let's get started. You ever meet an Applebaum, but it's spelled L-E and E-L?
I've met a lot of ELs, but it's
Applebaum?
not. Yeah, it's not the right way.
No, it's not the right way. Do you want to just punch them and yell at their parents, or is it like, well, Ellis Island?
I just take a deep breath.
Okay.
I'm a psychologist by training.
Yes,
so.
yes. Sorry. That's like, how does a psychologist help themselves? That's the other show.
Yeah,
exactly.
We could do another one.
Yes. All right. So we can't not start with my double negatives.
Okay.
About being arts nerds.
Yes, let's do that.
How many people have asked you your thoughts on Black Swan?
Oh my gosh.
Endless?
Endless.
Yeah.
Black Swan, Étoile, most recently, and everything in between.
Yes.
Sure.
Or like, did you really believe Carrie Bradshaw would be dating Mikhail Baryshnikov?
No.
Yes.
No.
Improbable.
Yeah. Especially because I know his wife.
Yes. What do you think of the movie White Nights?
I don't even know it.
Oh boy. I'm not going to shame the ballet arts girl here, but White Nights was an 80s film, a thriller with Gregory Hines and Michelle Baryshnikov. Mikhail, damn it. With Gregory Hines and Mikhail Baryshnikov.
All right. Going to add it to my list.
Now you have to watch it.
Now I have to watch it.
You're obligated
with a
to
good
watch.
friend of mine who just worked with him, so I have to.
Oh, yeah. Even better.
Yeah, exactly.
Even better. Yeah, so that is the movie.
All right.
All right, so forget Black Swan.
All right.
You know, forget the Nutcracker and all the other things. You got to watch White Nights.
Done.
Like, it's like ballet fighting.
Okay.
But it's the two of them.
All right.
The same. It's never happened before.
Okay.
It's incredible. All right.
Can't wait.
All right. Pop culture 101.
We got that
wrapped
done.
up.
Perfect.
We baked that down. When were you introduced to the arts, and was it like, did you find it by accident? Was it in school? Did you just see something on television?
Yeah. I had no choice.
Okay, you're forced into it?
I was born into a family of performing artists.
Okay,
so as soon as I could breathe,
guilt.
Exactly. As soon as I could breathe, hear, see, move, it was surrounding me. So my mother was a concert pianist, singer, dancer, actor. My father was a very well-known composer, orchestrator, arranger, and conductor. So we had
film, television, Broadway?
Broadway, orchestras, symphonies, New York Pops, commercials. And he was, I could talk about my dad for ages, but he really made his name. He was the orchestrator and arranger behind many of the great artists of the 50s and 60s, including Benny King, Neil Sedaka, Connie Francis, Brian Hyland. And he is best known for his arrangement of Benny King's Stand By Me.
hence the theme of the show, which we'll get to later.
Okay, perfect. So I had no choice. There were more pianos than bedrooms in the home in which I was raised. So the arts was around me. As soon as I could sit up, I was put at the piano. So
Nice.
You don't get out of that household without playing the piano. Certainly, I think my mother would have loved me to become a concert pianist in her footsteps. I trained to become a concert pianist, I guess you could say. I studied when I was really young, and I became really rebellious. And I said, no, Mom, I'm not going to become a concert pianist. I'm going to become a ballet dancer. That was my big rebellion.
Was that the Shonda of the family?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So my love was dance and is still. Yeah.
Your dad's not like Fred Ebb, is he?
In what regard?
Kander and Ebb? Like,
No.
Okay.
No.
Can you drop his name?
Oh, Stan Applebaum.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All
Stanley
right.
Applebaum. Just, incredible, so prolific. He was known as the king of the strings. He was really talented for making just a few stringed instruments sound like a full orchestra. And so back in the 50s and 60s, when they were recording sessions live, it was really cheap to work with Stan Applebaum because you could get just 4 or 5 stringed instruments to come in, pay them less, and they would sound like a full orchestra. So everyone wanted to work with my dad.
Do you know if he happened to have had perfect pitch?
My dad did not have perfect pitch, but my mother had perfect pitch. And I remember growing up, we'd be watching TV and she'd say, do you know what key that commercial's in? And I'd be like, I have no freaking clue, Mom. And she'd say D flat minor. I'm like, how did you know that? So my mother was an absolute musical genius. Child prodigy. She made her debut with a Pittsburgh Philharmonic or Pittsburgh Symphony, one of those when she was 10 years old.
Oh, just that.
Just that. So
Nothing to live up to
no
here.
shoes to fill.
Nothing,
no shoes to fill.
nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
How tall are you?
5'4".
Okay, so ballet, 5'4".
Yeah.
How'd that work out?
Or
is that a misnomer?
Height didn't matter whatsoever for me. I mean, I guess I was a decent height was fine. I was so passionate about it. Not surprisingly, I was and am an incredibly musical dancer. And I pursued this career pretty seriously. I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to just audition for companies. I had studied early on with the Joffrey Ballet Company years ago when the company was here in New York City, had trained with the Joffrey Company, then with the Boston Ballet Company, and then with a few coaches here privately. My parents, but particularly my mother, was really adamant about me going to college. Certainly, despite the fact that both my parents had very successful careers in the arts is challenging. It's challenging to be in that career over the long term. And I think they both, but particularly my mother, wanted to make sure that I got a college education and I pursued other avenues. So I stayed in New York City, continued to study dance professionally, and was getting gigs here and there, and began my undergraduate work at NYU. And so for me, what ended up happening is I was still thinking about how can I dance professionally and pursue other things in my life. And then I ran for my life on September 11th. I was living down near the towers in an NYU dorm.
Why, what happened?
Oh, yeah, small thing.
Yeah.
Small thing happened.
Let me think about that.
Yeah, there was a small event.
Wait,
and,
so you were down like on Chambers or
I was south of Chambers.
Okay.
Yeah, I was there and witnessed the whole thing from start to finish, and then ran, as many of us did, and was so blessed that I was not.
You run north or like run?
I ran north.
Yeah.
I ran north. I ran north to Washington Square Park back to NYU. And obviously that was just a transformative moment for all of us in New York and all of us around the world. And for me personally, and I remember the next day, I went to a studio called Steps on Broadway and 74th Street. It's a ballet studio. And I remember taking a ballet class. My mom had given me some of her clothing to wear because all my clothing was in the dorm that was now filled with dirt and dust and who knows what else. And I just remember thinking that I needed to do something else, that the world was so fragile. And while pursuing the arts was incredible for me personally, that I wanted to do something even bigger and better. So I did a little 180 and found myself within 2 months at a research placement at the Mount Sinai Hospital.
That's a pivot.
I pivoted. I still danced, but I pivoted.
Right.
Yeah.
So I went to college to not be a high school band director. No offense to any high school band directors.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly noble profession.
Yeah.
My parents were teachers. I mean, Mr. Holland's Opus is like my favorite film. But, full disclosure. But I wound up majoring in something like biomedical engineering.
Okay.
5-year program. By sophomore year, I went back to music.
Yeah. Yeah.
Much to the chagrin of my
we
parents.
find our ways back. We find our way back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why was medicine the pivot?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the pivot was actually to a research role within health psychology. And the pivot was, I was a psych major at the time. And so
you could have started a taco truck.
I could have started at a taco truck. I figured I would maybe start in something related to what I was studying. I was really interested in psychology, I will say that. And it's not the sexiest story. I was thinking maybe I'd go to medical school at some point. And I remember sitting with my father eating Chinese food on the Upper West Side one day when we were talking about what I was going to do as I was going through this period of transformation from really focused on a career in the arts to maybe I'm going to do something else. And we started talking about how I could go to medical school and then have incredible amounts of debt, or I could go for my doctorate in clinical psychology and they could pay me to go to school. And my father, who grew up in the Depression, was a World War II veteran and had financial struggles across his life, thought, well, that sounds pretty great. Why don't you go get paid to go to school? So it's me being honest, that was actually part of the driver, but ultimately actually was the best fit because I realized that what I was really passionate about was interacting with humans, not necessarily taking care of them medically.
Were you the sibling that did the pivot, or were you a follower, or you encouraged the others to?
I did the pivot. My brother works in the record industry, so he stayed. He stayed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So fair enough.
Yeah.
I feel like people who work in the arts, by the way, one of my recent guests is like a Second City alum, and she grew up doing Yes and in Chicago and came to New York City to just do only like stage and theater and comedy. Yeah. And she went up working at like the country's largest cancer and careers advocate group. Like, why am I here? But all the world's a stage isn't just an expression, and everything is theater of the absurd. And you're getting into a different arts, like the mental health arts and the but psychology is literally everything. How did that backstory, you're this girl on stage that wants applause, which is who we all are as actors and performers, how did that translate into you learning this art?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, number one, certainly there's a lot of mental health challenges within the arts, within folks in the arts. And I witnessed a lot of that during my training years. And so we are all nuts and we should all be in therapy.
Yes.
So I was already acutely aware of some of the challenges that folks face and understood the context and the many drivers of those challenges. And I think that certainly shaped my interest. I was always just interested in how we can, I've always been interested in how we can face adversity, how we can face challenge, and how we can move forward. The fact that humans are so incredibly resilient. For example, surviving 9/11, having friends of mine who lost family members in 9/11 and seeing them thrive years later. And why is that? And why do some people thrive and some people do not? Was always really interesting to me.
Is it nature nurture? Is that a real thing?
Nature nurture is real. I wouldn't say that's everything when it comes to the thriving, surviving. But there are a lot of factors. And like I shared, I think ultimately parts of my skills as a dancer have served me well in ways that I never anticipated in my career. More recently, again, with a lot of public speaking, a lot of speaking to big audiences and getting the word out is something. And I think had I not had my career in the arts, it would have been really hard for me.
Yeah. And I think you alluded to it before that, public speaking is like one of the biggest fears of humanity.
It is. Bigger than death, by the way.
I would love the pie chart of how many people who are not afraid on stage have an arts background.
Oh, all of us.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah.
None of us are afraid on stage because we were born of stage.
Correct. Exactly. But everyone else?
Yeah. Terrified. Jinx. I'll take that beer now.
Later on.
Exactly. So let's get into how you came to discover your role in this space in psychology, because
absolutely
everyone likes, I'm a life coach now and whatever. Like, it's like, I'm a blogger. Look at me. Everything's democratized. I can do this now. It really is it's a real talent. To understand people, how to read people, how to listen, right? Can you give me a story of like your first client?
No, but I can tell you what led to the sort of what am I going to do?
No HIPAA.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
We're going to protect the innocent.
I'm not going to give you an example of one client because it's not one client that stands out. But it was what happened to me as I moved through my training.
Go for it.
Which is that So I did my doctorate, which is a 5-year journey. Your doctorate takes 5 years, and then you do your internship year, which is the same as medical professionals do. It's 1 year where you're working 80 to 100 hours a week, getting paid no money whatsoever, and facing a lot of challenges within the healthcare system. And I did that year at Weill Cornell Medicine here in New York. And during that year, I had the opportunity to do a rotation at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, which was really eye-opening for me. And the opportunity was to start doing psychotherapy with patients with cancer, with advanced life-limiting cancers, primarily at the end of life. And I remember as I started to do this work, and I chose because it was so, quite frankly, I felt so much more impactful sitting in those sessions than with the quote unquote worried well, the folks I was treating in graduate school who had mild, it's a great term, mild anxiety. And I felt so much more like what I was doing, which was so much more important. And then something really interesting happened during my first year of fellowship at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. And my fellowship was in what's called psycho-oncology, the field that unites psychiatry and cancer care. And I was sitting with patient after patient after patient, many of whom had weeks or days left, some longer. And what was so striking is these patients were not so much focused on their own death and not so much focused on their own mortality, but what they focused on were their parents and partners and children and siblings and friends. The individuals who were left in the waiting room when I would bring the patient back to the counseling center, the individuals who were at home, and the individuals who were really the centerpiece of these patients' care. And what I heard was that these were the individuals who would be inevitably most deeply impacted by their eventual deaths. So this was 2010. This was long before COVID happened, long before we hit a caregiving crisis in this country. But I realized really early on that caregivers were such an instrumental part of the medical team, and cancer care specifically, though healthcare more broadly, was really, really relying on caregivers. So this is not a case example. This is an experience I had that first year that actually really shaped my experience. We were asked as postdoctoral fellows to review research protocols for the IRB, the Institutional Review Board that oversees the research that's happening in the institution. And this was just, I happened to get assigned a certain protocol. It was random. It was a protocol from the Bone Marrow Transplant Service. And they were piloting at the time what was very novel, which was an outpatient or homebound stem cell transplantation where a patient would get the transplant in the hospital and then they would just go home, which was great for patients because historically they have to remain in isolation for weeks or months in the hospital, which is terrible. But I remember reading through the protocol, which sounded amazing, and then I read through the consent form. The consent form said, in order for a patient to qualify, they needed to have a caregiver available 24/7 for 1 month at least.
Oh, that's convenient.
Very.
Yeah.
And ideally up through the first 100 days post-transplant. So I thought to myself, what an extraordinary ask.
Yeah.
Right. And if we're going to be asking families to shoulder these responsibilities, then we need to be doing something to help these very family members who are now truly becoming members of the healthcare team. And I also realized at the time that I basically started to take a look at what was being done in cancer centers across the United States to support caregivers. And by caregivers, I mean the parents, partners, children, siblings, and friends.
Right, because it's like a blanket term sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not talking about the healthcare professionals who are paid to do this. And I realized that there were no targeted support services for caregivers in any cancer center or healthcare system more broadly at the time. And so how I came to my calling is exactly that. I wanted to change that fact. And so 1 year later in 2011, I founded the Caregivers Clinic at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, which was the first targeted psychosocial mental health care program for caregivers in any U.S. cancer center. And the mission of the clinic is to assure that no caregiver experiencing significant distress as a result of their critical role goes unidentified and deprived of necessary psychosocial care.
The fact that it took however many years since we decided that cancer is more than just your biology for that to even happen in 2011.
Yeah, it's a problem.
I want to get back to that after the break because I have such a historical perspective on this as someone diagnosed 30 years ago. So we'll be right back. we're recording this in the summer. It'll air in the fall, but I've been producing a documentary series called Walk It Off.
Okay.
About men with cancer. We just don't talk about it. But I use the term not frivolously because that's what I was told to do.
Walk it off.
Walk it off. You're done with treatment. Get on with your life. Go forth. Enjoy yourself. You're fine now, says us. Let alone what I put my parents through, what my brother went through. And I kind of, wandered aimlessly through the 90s. I had jobs. I got my whole career changed and everything like that. But I remember when I stumbled upon Livestrong in its yellow wristband heyday, pre-Lance being Lance. And it was the first time I felt like I had worked in advertising those years. I was looking at the cultural zeitgeist of the yellow wristbands. And it was like, cancer patients are human beings like everyone else. And the country is like, oh yeah, look at that. And they were all about like cancer is a disease of the family and caregiving is a thing. It's a word, but it really wasn't in the practice of care because survivorship was just a nice thing to say. I love that you were talking about psychosocial oncology because I remember when the society founded.
Yeah.
Like finally.
Yeah. Dr. Jimmy Holland.
Yes. Psychosocial care is a thing we can use now as words to yell into clouds about and hope gets implemented.
Yes.
So perspective is, yes, that was 2011. It should not have taken that long. It should
not have.
But how many years beforehand should that have been a thing?
Yeah, yeah. So what you're referring to is the field of psycho-oncology, officially called.
Yes.
Founded by Dr. Jimmy Holland, who was just one of the most incredible trailblazers in medicine, incredible woman, incredible mentor, psychiatrist by trade, and colleague and next door neighbor of my office back in the day at Sloan Kettering before her death in 2017. Dr. Holland believed that in order to treat the patient with cancer, you have to treat the human living with cancer. And she advocated that distress should be actually identified as a vital sign, just like all of the other physical vital signs. She really believed that the mental health piece was equally as important. And she began this work. I mean, I think you're absolutely right because it was the early 80s. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it took...
too long.
It took too long.
I read that, when you invent something from scratch that people didn't know they always wanted but wish they had, to say it was a runaway hit is a really bad way to explain the caregiver clinic. But you had like stanchion lines of people wanting to get in.
Absolutely. I mean, so I started small. I basically just sent an email to now remember, I was the littlest fish at the bottom of this big food chain that is Sloan Kettering.
Yeah.
So here I am as a postdoc fellow. I sent an email just to my department. And because I was a fellow at the time, I couldn't bill for services, which meant that I was going to provide care free of charge, which might have been why people wanted to come see me.
Right.
Who knows? But so at the time, I was given 4 hours a week in the counseling center. I was told you can do whatever you want with those 4 hours. I only advertised within my department, and that 4-hour block got booked for months. And then very quickly, that 4 hours became a Monday through Friday opportunity.
What was Sloan's reaction? Were they surprised?
They weren't surprised. I think they were concerned all along with the floodgates that would open, right? And I think their concern was, well, you build it, they're going to come, and are you going to be able to accommodate all the folks who are going to need your care? I had to do a lot of advocating early on, certainly. One of the most important steps looking back that I took is that historically caregivers, for example, Dr. Holland would see caregivers in her clinical practice on occasion, but they would be, their info would be documented in the record of the patient with cancer because they were being seen in the context of their husband's care or their wife's care, their children's. But of course, that leads to questions about confidentiality and privacy and who in the world is the patient, right? So if my data are documented in Stan Applebaum, my dad's record, is Stan Applebaum the patient or is it Allison Applebaum, right? There's questions. And so I advocated that caregivers become patients themselves of the healthcare system that addressed privacy and confidentiality. There was no question about who the patient was. But two other real benefits. One that was super important to the administration, and one that is super important to caregivers themselves. What's important to the administration is with a medical record in place, you have an ethical mechanism to bill for services. And so I was able to create a revenue model for the institution. Certainly, I'm not billing, and my colleagues and I are not billing what a medical oncologist would bill, but we are able to generate revenue. From a caregiver perspective, there is an existential benefit. The idea that I have my own record, I am worthy of care, the institution cares about me enough that I am a patient here. And I think that is actually quite important.
I was reading a term you used. You didn't say research, you said me-search. I thought that was very clever. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go talk about that.
So when I was in graduate school, my classmates and I, we were in a class of 5 people. It was very, very small. I mean, if they pay you to go to grad school, that's a small class.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
We joked about doing me-search. There were a handful of folks in my class who were studying topics that were interesting to them because of their own personal experiences. So someone studying eating disorders because of a history of eating disorders, or someone studying PTSD because they had had early childhood traumas. Me-search being somebody decides to study something because it's interesting because they've had a personal experience with it.
Right. You're not Googling yourself, basically.
You're not Googling yourself, but you're doing research that means something to you because you've had a personal experience. So I didn't intend to do me-search. That wasn't really my goal. As I shared, really was struck that here I was in the largest department of psychiatry in any cancer center in the world with, I don't know, at the time, there were over 20 or 30 psychiatrists and 15 psychologists and God knows how many social workers. And yet, not one of those members was focused on supporting caregivers. So there was a drive I already had. I founded the Caregivers Clinic in 2011. It just so happened that a few months later, I stepped into the caregiving role for my father. That happened after I had already developed the clinic. I had already had funding from the American Cancer Society to conduct research with caregivers. So I wasn't doing me-search at the time. It just happened the other direction.
You became your own customer.
I became my own customer. Yeah, I became a research study participant of one that I studied intensely over the course of a decade.
And all that career advice to yourself that you gave to other people and built now was yours to learn anew?
Differently.
Yes.
Differently. I think that, and I think anyone you speak to who works in healthcare who's also been a family caregiver will say, this was the most challenging experience of my life. And what's so striking is that even as a healthcare professional on faculty in one of the hospitals where my father was receiving care, I found navigating the healthcare system incredibly, incredibly difficult.
Really? Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that one.
Well, all right. So the book is called Stand By Me.
Now you know why.
Now I
well,
knew
double
why.
meaning.
Now the listeners know why.
Now listeners know why.
You and your entendres. Okay, Stand By Me, a guide to navigating modern, meaningful caregiving.
Yeah.
I like the use of the word meaningful.
Thank you.
Because it can be just so tossed away so easily.
Thank you.
And there's no one cookie cutter size for everybody.
Nope.
So, why a book?
Yeah.
Was there, there's no books? I'm going to fill a need?
No, there's lots of books on caregiving.
Okay.
But there's no books that I felt at the time really addressed the profound mental health challenges that caregivers face, the existential challenges that caregivers face, the topics that caregivers were sharing with me and my colleagues in clinic that they were afraid to share with anyone else. There were our incredible self-help books there out for caregivers on how to be a better caregiver, how to take care of your loved one, how to create all the, self-care lists that you can. But I think there was a very big gap. The book is really my offering a Cliff Notes version to all of the education, training, validation, and support you all would get if you were a caregiver in the Caregivers Clinic. And that's important because it's part of why I wrote the book. When we went down into law, I knew I was going to write a book a long time ago. I knew there was an experience I had. I remember I was sitting in the emergency room with my father. It was 2013. I had just spent my day navigating clinical challenges at Sloan Kettering for caregivers. And here I am in the emergency room with my father, navigating challenges with him. And I kept thinking to myself, there is going to be a story to tell at some point. And during my caregiving experience with him, there were many experiences I had where I would often sort of bookmark them, say, okay, remember this one for the book. You're going to want to share this story. What ended up happening for me in terms of the timeline is that my father died in February of 2019. And a year later, we went down into lockdown. And as many of you know who've gone through loss, grief doesn't have a timeline. Just because a year had gone by doesn't mean my grief had disappeared. I was still grieving pretty intensely. And at the time, living on my own, very isolated in my Sloan Kettering faculty apartment on the 19th floor, which meant when the elevators weren't working or we were concerned about COVID, I was walking up and down 19 flights of stairs.
Cardio.
Yeah, it was great cardio. But I faced two crises during that period. One was the grief was still there and I missed my father intensely. My life orbit had been so focused on him for so long. But the second crisis was that the demand for care in our caregivers clinic was months and months and months long. And there was no way that I and my colleagues were going to be able to meet the needs of so many caregivers in urgent need of care. And I realized that I personally was only scratching the surface in addressing the profound unmet psychosocial needs of caregivers nationally of the at least 53 million. The number is probably closer to 80 million at this point. And so what I wanted to do, why I wrote this book, is I wanted to make all that I was doing at Sloan Kettering accessible to all of the caregivers across the country, most of whom don't have access to high quality psychosocial care, many of whom don't have health insurance to cover these types of sessions, and really wanted to make it available in a format that could get out to those who really need it.
There's some kind of karmic, weird, spiritual, Kabbalah-driven meaning to the fact that your father was the producer of Stand By Me.
Was the arranger, orchestrator.
Right,
yeah. But
even better.
Even better.
Even better. That's a big deal.
Yeah. And something I should say, not just the arranger, orchestrator, but the string section in the middle that is a symphonic string line is actually my dad's composition.
Oh, wow.
So he wrote this piece of music. It's about...
Now it's in my head.
Yeah. I mean, you'll have to use it in the background somewhere.
Stand by me. And darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me.
So he wrote that. That was his composition. He wrote it on a whim one evening. He was playing around,
like back of the napkin genius stuff.
Seriously, back on. I have the original sketch. It's literally just a little sketch. He was just playing around with how rich and full he could make just a few stringed instruments sound. He titled that piece Daphne, and eventually it was inserted into Stand By Me. So my dad actually composed the middle section of Stand By Me and was the orchestrator and arranger. So I just want to clarify that, not the producer, but he had some other, Lieber and Stoller were the folks behind that, but he had some other important roles.
But those three words have become the embodiment of who you are and what you've done.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty karmic.
It's pretty amazing.
It's tragically karmic. It's a good privilege.
Thank you.
What has come of the seed you planted with this clinic?
Yeah.
And has it, I'll use the word metastasize in a good sense?
Only you can say that.
Because I can get away with that?
You can get away with that. I can't get away with saying that.
Where has that gone?
Yeah. So I will be able to retire when every healthcare system in this country has a caregivers clinic. My mission is to change how caregivers are treated within the U.S. healthcare system. The Caregivers Clinic has now been identified as a gold standard exemplar program for family caregivers. The American Cancer Society co-published with me a toolkit that really is the Cliff Notes version of how I started the clinic so that other healthcare systems can do the same. I am waiting on funding, fingers, toes, and all the hair on my head crossed, funding from the NIH that will allow me to train 200 cancer centers in the next 5 years to do the exact same thing, to build caregivers clinics. And part of the new role that I have at the Mount Sinai Health System, which I can speak about, is motivated by my desire to make sure that not just every cancer center, but every hospital in the country has support for caregivers as well. No caregiver should have to leave the healthcare setting where their care partner is receiving medical care for their own psychosocial support.
Why has it taken so long? And is the answer really just it needed to be no longer a cost center?
Why has it taken so long? Number one is capacity. Right. We are working with an incredibly overburdened healthcare system as it is. How long does it take for you to get an appointment with your doctor? Right. And so now we are saying caregivers are patients in their own right. These are new patients. And so what we need then is more and more staff to meet the needs of caregivers. Number two, I think it's only recently that healthcare systems recognize that the quality of care that's provided and the potential outcomes of treatments are contingent on the availability of a family caregiver, that the presence of a well-supported, educated caregiver, in many cases, is the difference between life and death, between quality of life and life, maybe the difference between an extended hospitalization or not. But that's very, very recent. And so, and I just think thankfully right now there's a lot of momentum really shining a bright spotlight on the value of family caregiving.
I mean, it harkens to, and this could be a whole other show we talk about. By the way, that seat's yours. Anything you want.
Oh,
This
cool.
is a great conversation.
All right, I'm coming back.
But it took like 11 or 12 years to quantify that navigation improves health outcomes and saves money.
Yeah.
Right? Caregiving does the same damn thing.
Exactly.
Right. How do you make a caregiver reimbursable?
Yeah. So the estimate from 2023 was the economic value of caregivers in the U.S. is $600 billion. That is the financial value of all the things that we do as caregivers. If we put a dollar value on it, it's $600 billion, despite the fact that we know that up to a quarter of caregivers experience very high financial strain as a result of caregiving, and nearly a fifth eventually go into poverty because of caregiving. So that is a striking fact, right? Yeah. The disconnect between the value of their efforts and their own financial toxicity. I just read last week a new report coming out from Atsuko in Colombia, their School of Public Health, saying it's closer to $890 billion, the value of caregiving right now. So
Probably
this
more
is
than that too.
Extraordinary.
How do you
right?
put a dollar on volunteering to just do what you're never asked to do, but you're going to do anyway?
And what most of us feel like there's no choice to do.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. I like to wrap my shows up by doing a Gen X AI round.
Go for it.
So what I do is I feed my chat GPT friend who has no name. I should probably name it. I don't know. Information about you.
Oh, God.
And then I yell into the void about how I feel about what the show's going to be like and what I've learned about getting to know you. And I ask it one question. If you were a Netflix series, who would your 3 pop culture soulmates be that play your character?
Oh, God.
All right. Number 1, you are Dr. Carrie Weaver from ER. Fierce, brilliant, and walking with fire in her bones, Weaver never waited for permission. She built the thing that didn't exist, even when it cost her friend's favor or mental peace. Just like Allison, she knew the system was broken and decided to make something better from scratch.
I will take that, although I did not lose my friends and family because of this, to be clear.
Okay, it's AI.
I know.
All right. Little Grace, you are you're Leilania Pierce from Reality Bites, Winona Ryder. Gen X idealist with a camcorder and a trust problem. She wants to tell the truth even when it makes people squirm. Allison's book has that same raw honesty, no soft focus platitudes, just lived chaos of love, loss, and indivisible labor. And you had to grow up too fast.
I did.
You are also Felicity Porter.
Okay.
But not the pixie cut post-Ben nonsense.
Okay.
It was very clear.
Very clear when I came in, yeah.
Dump the safety net, walk into uncertainty, and chase something bigger than yourself. Purpose. That's you walking out of a ballet studio on 9/12/01 and into a psych ward at Mount Sinai, literally. Same longing, same reinvention, no flake.
Wow. All right. I mean,
Do you concur?
Yeah, with a lot of that.
Yeah.
With a lot of that.
Like it's
different
80%
different haircuts, but different. Yeah.
I would have accepted Velma from Scooby-Doo.
Sure.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
I'd throw her in.
Maybe Heather's. I don't know. Pick your Winona Ryder character.
Pretty good.
Yes.
That's pretty good.
Well, I'm thrilled to have had you on the show. Like I said, open door.
Thank you so
back.
much.
This is something near and dear to me.
Yeah.
Because no one gave a shit about my dad and my mom and my brother when
I was going to ask you that. So
no one gave a shit.
No one asked.
No, didn't matter.
Yeah.
Didn't matter at all.
Were they acknowledged?
No. My dad just drove me back and forth to care. My mother collapsed and my brother was in college.
Oh.
Yeah, good times. All right. The book again is Stand By Me, A Guide to Navigating Modern Meaningful Caregiving by Simon Element, 2024. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Almost your anniversary publish date?
A little bit over. Yeah, February 2024.
All right. Wherever books are sold, we'll put links in the episode description.
Yeah.
Allison Applebaum. Dr. Allison Applebaum.
Thank you so much.
You cannot save someone on the airplane, but you are still a doctor.
I can't, but I can talk you through your anxiety if the plane is falling.
Well done. Thanks, folks. We'll see you next time on the show. Take care. Bye-bye.
Out of Patience with Matthew Zachary is a production of Matthew Zachary Worldwide. The executive producer is Matthew Zachary. It is mixed and edited by Kyle Moore. If you like the show, ratings and reviews are always welcome wherever you get your podcasts. If you have guest suggestions or would like to learn more about sponsorship opportunities, email podcast@matthewzachary.com. For more information about Matthew Zachary and Matthew Zachary Worldwide, visit matthewzachary.com.